Thoughts to build on by KOPMEYER, 16. Chapter 16. How to survive. We hear a lot about survival these days. Survival from this danger. Survival from that danger. It all sounds so ominous. Perhaps we had better make our own do-it-yourself survival kit. Let's start by looking at history and see how survival has been accomplished, starting all the way back to the beginning of life on this planet. Basically, there have been two consecutive steps to survival throughout the ages. 1. First, adjust to your existing environment. 2. Having first adjusted, constantly improve what you then are. Let's see how these two survival steps worked in the past and how they will work in the present. First, the principle of adjusting to existing environment. In prehistoric ages and throughout the long evolution of plant and animal life, only those plants and animals that adapted to their changing environment survived. Those plants that did not adjust to the changing temperatures, soil, moisture, and other growth factors simply did not survive. Those that did adjust took the first necessary step in survival. The early forms of animal life had to do the same, and more. Animal life had to adjust to the elements, and it also had to adjust to living in the same environment with other animals. This adjustment to living alongside other animals involved fleeing safely when attacked, defeating other animals in combat, or joining them by making some accommodation that would allow peaceful coexistence. Now, let's examine the second necessary step to survival, which is, having first adjusted to your environment, you must constantly improve what you then are. This is the law of the jungle. It is also a fundamental law of life. Survival depends not only on adjustment but on constant improvement, which will enable you to keep up with or, preferably, surpass competition within your environment. For example, in plant life, a pretty little flower might be well adjusted to the elements of its environment but fail to improve in such a way as to prevent being smothered out of existence by other plants that constantly improved in growth, size, strength, and in rapidly expanding their area coverage. An animal might adjust to its natural environment and its relations with other animals and thus temporarily survive. But if that animal did not improve at a rate equal to or exceeding that of competing animals, it soon would become so inferior that it would no longer survive the competition of the other animals which had become increasingly superior. Thus, by a study of the history of evolution of all plants and animals, we find that the two steps for survival set forth at the beginning of this chapter have been necessary from the first stages of life on this planet to and including the present. So let's see how these two steps for survival apply to various situations in present times, and let's start with a specific example. Let's apply step number 1. Adjust to your existing environment. In your family, home, neighborhood, job, business, wherever you are at any time, you first must fit in, adjust, cooperate, participate and, you may not like this word, conform. What? In a free country? Can't you do what you like? Can't you be unconventional? Can't you express your individuality, no matter how radical? Why fit in, adjust, conform? The answer is quick and simple. You must first fit in, adjust, conform, in order to survive. Of course, I don't mean survive in terms of life and death, although that sometimes has been the case. I mean top of form, bottom of form vibe in terms of being an effective, acceptable, compatible personality. And especially note the word first. You must first fit in, adjust, cooperate, participate and conform in your relations to your family, home, neighborhood, job, business environment. You first must make whatever adjustments are necessary to make you acceptable. That gets you in on the best possible terms. Do otherwise and you just won't be accepted. You'll arouse opposition, antagonism, and reap a harvest of trouble. Then, having first made whatever adjustments are necessary to conform to the established requirements of your environment and thus having been accepted as a welcome part of the group, you can put the second principle of survival into effect and begin the process of improvement. Let's look at these two principles of survival in a specific instance. Let's assume that you have been promoted to a position of executive responsibility in your business. If you start out by not adjusting to your new environment, if you do not conform to the expectations of those who promoted you, if you do not cooperate, participate, fit in, make yourself an acceptable part of the management team, you will not survive in your new job. Not doing what is required to be in, you soon will be out, because you violated the first principle of survival. First, adjust to your environment. Now, let's suppose you use this first principle of survival. You adjust to all of the requirements of your new job environment. You do everything to conform fully to the expectations of those who promoted you. You cooperate wholeheartedly with all company policies. You participate enthusiastically in all company activities. You fit in perfectly as an accepted, welcome member of the management team. Naturally, you survive in your new job. Why? Specifically, because you have used the first principle of survival, which has been proven throughout the ages since the very beginning of life itself. So, being in, accepted, safe, secure, you are in a position to use the second principle of survival, having first adjusted, improve what you then are. So begin improving yourself, your work effectiveness, your employee management cooperation. Take, as your business motto, how can I do it better? Make constant improvement a way of life. The unaccepted outsider who demands improvement of our business, social, or political structure will generate great annoyance, irritation, resentment and resistance, while the accepted conformist can work from the inside for gradual, acceptable improvement at a rate adjusted to the tolerance of that which is to be improved. The teaching of first adapting, adjusting, fitting in, conforming, will not be welcome or acceptable to the exhibitionists, egocentrics, show-offs and all those who are burdened by warped psychosis which can only be fulfilled by attracting attention to themselves by their own non-conformity. Nor will the lessons of this chapter be accepted by the revolutionaries who attempt to force, emotionally or physically, their own selfish improvements on society from outside the established social structure. As this is being written, the vast nation of China, which once was the seat of world culture, learning, progress and power, has become a depressing example of the results of being unwilling to adapt, adjust and conform in any way to any of the various forms of political, social, economic and moral concepts held by progressive nations throughout the world. Instead, China persists in vainly attempting to impose its own archaic political, economic and social philosophy on underdeveloped nations by infiltrated revolutionaries from within and open aggression from without. As a result, China is ostracized by the outside world and shattered within its own borders. The corrections which China needs to make are clearly evident from the lessons of this chapter. Coming closer to home, we have what amounts to a kind of Negro revolution here in the United States. The problem, its cause and cure are far too vast and complex to analyze here. I simply want to apply the two-part formula discussed in this chapter to what is probably the most difficult and sensitive part of the Negro problem, the integration of Negro families into all-white neighborhoods. There is more white resistance to this than any other form of integration. Why? Surveys have been made in all-white neighborhoods to find out what are the real reasons for the white families' rejection of Negro families as neighbors. Know what the real reasons are? You have just read about them in this chapter. White families are afraid that Negro families will not adjust, adapt and conform to the white family standards of morality, cleanliness and maintenance of property values. The white families interviewed emphasized time and again that it was not the color of the Negro skin to which they objected, but they said that they would be afraid to go out on the street at night. They were afraid that the Negroes would not keep up their property and cause the neighborhood to become run down. They felt sure, almost without exception, that property values would decrease. I won't continue the list of anticipated fears and grievances, but I assure you that every one reflected the white family's firm belief that the Negro families moving into their neighborhood would 1. Not adjust, not adapt and not conform to the present all-white neighborhood standards. They felt that the Negro families would not fit in, and 2. That the Negro families would not improve the neighborhood once they moved in. That is the real problem, and until white families feel sure that those conditions will not take place, all the civil rights laws, Negro demonstrations, protest marches and riots will only aggravate the problem, not solve it. Until men and women of goodwill, Negro and white, work together to solve that problem with the proven principles set forth in this chapter, little progress will be made. Being a good neighbor maintaining and improving the neighborhood obviously has no connection with the color of one's skin. The neighborhoods in which most Negroes unfortunately have been compelled to live have created an unfavorable image, which is not justified. This unfavorable image cannot be improved by Negro activities which arouse white antagonism and hostility. On the contrary, what is needed is a persistent effort to obtain justice with goodwill, and to provide Negroes with living conditions which offer them an equal opportunity to conform to the highest neighborhood expectations of white communities. Wherever this has been done, the Negroes have demonstrated their ability to achieve acceptance, not by demanding it, but by deserving it, which is the only way acceptance can be achieved. The emphasis must be placed, not on mere permission, obtained by legal or other means, but on deserved acceptance as a good neighbor. The principles which originated with the beginning of life on this earth and which are just as valid today, surely are worthy of your most thoughtful consideration. Have you tried applying them to the various phases of your own life? Do you adapt, adjust, conform to the highest expectations of all the other people in your life? Having done this, do you then constantly improve? Do you?